You saved 4 hours with AI this week. That is what it felt like. A stopwatch says something very different. So this is the honest list. The AI tools that hand you real hours back, measured, and the ones that just move the work around. Last July, a research group called METR ran the test properly. 16 experienced developers, 246 real tasks, half the tasks with AI allowed, half without, assigned at random. The developers finished 19% slower with the AI. Afterwards, they were asked how it had gone. They said the AI had made them about 20% faster, feeling 20% faster while running 19% slower. That gap is why tool advice is so unreliable. Here is the population number. The St. Louis Fed put actual reported savings at roughly 5% of your working hours. 5% of a 40-hour week is 2 hours and 12 minutes. Not a day, not a week, 2 hours and change. But 1 in 5 daily users saves 4 hours or more. Same tools, same jobs, wildly different results. The difference is not which model you picked. It is which slice of your day you pointed it at. So I sorted the tools by the hour they genuinely take back with the receipts, and I will name the ones I would skip. Take 1 working hour and cut it into pieces. Some of it is producing, some is finding things. The rest is meetings, admin, and switching between the two. Generative models are excellent at the producing slice. For most knowledge workers, producing is the smallest slice of the hour, and they add a slice that did not exist before, checking. Reading what it wrote, catching what it invented, rewriting the parts that came back subtly wrong. So the rule I use is 1 sentence. A tool saves you hours when the checking is cheaper than the doing. Meeting notes pass that test easily. You skim a summary for 30 seconds and you know whether it is right. A 500-line refactor fails it. Reading code you did not write, carefully enough to trust it, takes longer than writing it yourself. That single rule sorts every tool on this list into 3 tiers, and the top tier is a lot smaller than the marketing suggests. Tier 1 gives back 45 minutes to 2 hours a week each, and the checking costs you almost nothing. Tier 2 saves serious time, but only once you build a workflow around it. Most people stop before they get there. Tier 3 feels spectacular and returns close to 0. I will name those 2 because 3 of them are probably open in your browser. Start with Tier 1. It is the least exciting category in AI, and it is where the hours actually are. Tier 1 is boring. It is the stuff that does not make keynotes, notes, transcripts, summaries, and the small text chores wedged between the real work. The reason it wins is that a human can verify the output at a glance. Start with meetings, because that is where the clearest hour hides. Say you sit in 10 calls a week. Each one leaves a residue behind it. Notes to write up, decisions to record, follow-ups that evaporate by Friday afternoon. Granola is the one I keep coming back to. It runs on your laptop and listens to the system audio directly, so no extra participant appears in the room. You type your own scrappy notes during the call, and it fills in everything around them the moment you hang up. That design is working commercially. In March 2026, Granola raised $125 million at a $1.5 billion valuation, led by Index Ventures. 18 months before that, it had about 5,000 weekly users. The company has now raised $192 million in total. The time math is undramatic, and that is the point. 8 minutes of writing up per call, 10 calls a week, is roughly 80 minutes. Skimming 10 generated summaries costs about 5. Call it an hour and a quarter every week from one tool you configure once and then forget about. What it gets wrong is intent. It captures what was said, not what was meant, and it will record a bad decision in beautifully confident bullet points. Read the action items closely. Skim the summary paragraph and move on. And if a call was genuinely important, keep your own 2 lines. Second in Tier 1, turning audio into text. Interviews, voice memos, lectures, that 30-minute rant you recorded in the car because the idea was actually good. OpenAI released Whisper as open weights back in 2022, and it is still the best deal in the entire field. It runs on your own machine, costs nothing per hour, and your audio does not leave the laptop, which matters more than people expect once you start recording client calls. You can drive it from a terminal or through a desktop wrapper if you would rather not. On a recent laptop, an hour of clean speech comes back in a handful of minutes with word-level timestamps attached so you can jump straight to the bit you half remember. Transcribing an hour of audio by hand takes roughly 4 hours if you are being careful. Whisper does it in minutes. Then you spend 20 fixing names and jargon. That is a different category of work, not a marginal improvement on the old one. Third, reading. Not skimming, reading. The 40-page PDF. the 8 open tabs of documentation, the 6 papers you saved in March and have been carrying around ever since. Google built the best tool for this and then renamed it. On the 16th of July 2026, NotebookLM officially became Gemini Notebook, folded into the same family as the chat app and search. The rename came with a number attached: 30 million users and more than 600,000 organizations. For a research tool with no feed, no notifications, and no viral loop of any kind, that is an enormous install base built almost entirely on word of mouth. The reason it works is the constraint. It answers only from the sources you upload, and every claim comes back with a citation you can click straight through to. Your checking cost collapses to 1 click, which is exactly the rule from a minute ago, made mechanical. The July update gave every notebook its own sandboxed cloud computer, so it can write and run code against your documents. Ask it to chart a figure across 4 quarterly reports, and it computes the answer instead of estimating one, which closes the single most annoying gap these tools had. For me, this is the largest single line item on the whole list. 3 hours of reading turns into 40 minutes of asking, plus 15 minutes clicking through citations to verify the 2 claims I intend to repeat out loud. Everything I do not plan to repeat, I do not verify. Fourth, ordinary search, the kind where you need exactly 1 fact and the open web has buried it under 12 pages of affiliate content. Perplexity built a browser called Comet around this idea, where the assistant lives inside the tab and can act across the pages you have open. Roughly 18 million people were using it every month earlier this year, up from about 2.5 million a year before. The honest limit: on anything contested or anything from the past 2 weeks, you still open the sources yourself. The summary is a fast index, not an answer. Treat it as the thing that tells you which 4 links deserve your attention, and the value holds up. Now Tier 2, where the tools save real time, but only after you build something around them. This is where most people quit, and quitting is rational, because the first week is genuinely slower than doing the work by hand. Every Tier 2 tool has that dip: 2 weeks of setup, prompts, and rewritten workflows before the line crosses over. If you evaluate one of these after 3 days, you will conclude it is useless, and you will be measuring the dip rather than the tool. First up, research agents. You hand over a question. The model spends 5 to 30 minutes browsing, and it comes back with a written report and a source list. ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and Perplexity all ship a version of this now. The good runs read 40 to 100 pages and tell you where each number came from. The weak runs produce a confident essay assembled from 4 blog posts and a press release that were all copying each other. When it works, it is a half-day compressed into 15 minutes, and it is startling the first time. When it fails in the most expensive way available. A document that looks completely finished and is wrong in the 3rd paragraph in a way you will only discover in a meeting. So my rule here is strict. Open every citation you plan to actually use. If a report lists 30 sources and you open none of them, you have not saved 4 hours. You have borrowed them against a mistake you will make in public later. Now the big one: coding, which is where most of the money and most of the argument currently live. Cursor went from $100 million of annual recurring revenue in January 2025 to $1 billion by November and past $2 billion by February 2026. That is the fastest ramp any software company has recorded. Claude Code reached $1 billion annualized within 6 months of launch, and was past $2.5 billion in run rate by February. Anthropic as a whole reported a $30 billion run rate in April. At their developer conference in May, Dario Amodei said the company had planned for 10 times growth in the quarter and got 80. Those are not the numbers of a product people are politely trying out and then abandoning. And yet the trial I opened with measured experienced developers running 19% slower on the very tools generating those numbers. Both things are true at once, and reconciling them is the useful part of this whole video. The developers in that study were working inside repositories they had personally maintained for years, most of them over 1 million lines. They knew where everything lived. The model did not, so every suggestion needed a careful read before it could be trusted, and that reading is where the time went. Flip those conditions, and the result flips with them. An unfamiliar language, a fresh project, boilerplate, test coverage, a throwaway script you would otherwise skip entirely. There the model knows more about the problem than you do, and the checking is fast because you can simply run it. So the practical version is this: let it write the code you could not be bothered to write, not the code you would have written well. Your 5-year-old production service is the worst place to start and the most tempting one. There is a general principle hiding in that, and it applies to every tool on the list. These systems are as useful as the context you can hand them cheaply. A folder of your documents, a repository, a transcript, your last 20 emails. Feed a tool your real context, and it moves up a tier. That is why a grounded notebook beats a general chat window at the same task, using the same underlying model. Same intelligence, completely different hit rate, because one of them can see your material. Next, automation. The glue tools that wire one app to another and take a repeating chore off your plate completely, rather than helping you do it faster. N8N is the one worth learning. It is open source. You can run it on your own hardware, and it treats an AI model as one node inside a workflow, rather than as the entire product, which is the right shape for anything you intend to trust. It went from a $2.5 billion valuation in October 2025 to $5.2 billion after SAP invested, with something in the region of 1.7 million people building on it every month. The arithmetic here is different from everything else on this list because it compounds. A chore that takes 6 minutes and happens every working day is 26 hours a year. Automate it once, and you keep collecting for as long as it runs, with no further effort from you. The catch is maintenance. Every workflow you build is a small piece of software that can break at 3 in the morning because an API changed a field name. Build 5, not 50, and only for chores you genuinely repeat. And automation you check daily is a job, not a saving. That brings us to the agent wave, which is the loudest category of 2026. Tools that do not just answer, but click, browse, run code, and finish multi-step tasks while you do something else. The honest state of it, excellent inside a system that can verify its own work like code with tests, and unreliable on the open web where a wrong click is silent. The time saving is real when a failure is cheap and visible, and negative when it is neither. Spreadsheets and data are the quiet win nobody demos on stage. Not forecasting, not dashboards. The tedious part, cleaning a messy export, reshaping columns, writing the formula you half remember from 2 years ago. Paste the header row and a few sample lines into a model. Describe what you want and take the formula or the small script back, because you can run it and see the output immediately. Checking is close to free, which puts it firmly in Tier 1 behavior, even though it looks technical. Documents and slides. The category where the demo is spectacular, and the honest saving is smaller than it looks on stage. Gamma turns a prompt into a deck in under a minute and has somewhere north of 70 million people doing exactly that. For an internal update, or for a first pass at structure, it beats staring at an empty PowerPoint for 20 minutes. For anything that genuinely matters, you will rewrite most of it. The saving is not the writing. It is skipping the blank page and the layout fiddling. Call it 40 minutes back on a deck that would have eaten 2 hours. Audio and video production is the most underrated line on this list, if you make anything at all with a voice in it. Editing a recording by deleting words from a transcript, instead of dragging waveforms around, changes the shape of the job entirely. An hour of raw footage that used to take 3 hours to cut takes about 1, and the checking is trivial because you can hear the result. Email and scheduling. Small per item, large in aggregate, and the one place where a wrong answer sent automatically costs more than every minute it saved. Drafting replies works. Triage and labeling works well. Full autopilot does not, because one confidently wrong message to a client wipes out a month of saved minutes in a single afternoon. Keep a human finger on send, which brings me to Tier 3. The tools that feel incredible in the moment and return close to nothing you can measure at the end of the week. General chat as a replacement for search is the main offender. It is fast, it is pleasant, and roughly half the time you go and verify the answer anyway, which is the original task plus a detour through a very persuasive paragraph. Image generation is the second. Wonderful for a mood board, a slow trap for anything that has to match a brand, because you will regenerate it 40 times chasing a detail you could have fixed by hand in 2 minutes, and long-form writing in your own voice. Getting a model to sound like you takes longer than writing badly in editing, unless you have built a real prompt with examples, which pushes it straight back into Tier 2 and its 2-week dip. These are not bad tools. They are simply not our tools. Use them for the parts of the job you enjoy, and stop budgeting time savings against them, because that is where the 4-hour illusion from the opening comes from. People ask which model to use, and at this point the answer is boring. The frontier models are close enough that the tool wrapped around them matters more. Pick the one your work already lives inside, and spend the save decision on setup instead. A quick word on money, because the subscriptions, add up considerably faster than the hours do. 3 tools at $20 to $30 a month is roughly $800 a year. If your time is worth $50 an hour, you need to save about 16 hours across the whole year to break even. That is a low bar, and it is still worth doing the sum before you subscribe. Where it stops being a low bar is at 11 subscriptions, most of them opened once during a launch week, which is where a lot of people end up. Audit the list every quarter and cancel anything you have not opened in a month. And one hard line on data: client contracts, medical records, unreleased financials, and anything covered by an agreement do not go into a consumer chat window. Use the enterprise tier, use a local model, or do that part by hand and accept the time cost. Now, the number that reframed all of this for me, and it comes from the corporate side rather than the personal one, a 2025 MIT report called the GenAI Divide examined enterprise deployments and found that 95% of pilots produced no measurable impact on profit and loss. Not a small impact, none at all. That came from 52 executive interviews, 153 surveyed leaders, and 300 publicly disclosed deployments, set against somewhere between $30 and $40 billion of enterprise spending. And the cause was not model quality. The authors call it a learning gap. The systems did not retain feedback, did not adapt to the workflow, and did not improve with use. Generic tools, impressive in a demo, brittle inside a real process with real edge cases. The 5% that did work shared one trait. They were pointed at a single narrow, repetitive, checkable process, and the people using them changed how they worked around it, rather than bolting it onto the old routine and hoping. That is the same finding as your desk, scaled up. Adoption was not the constraint. ChatGPT passed 900 million weekly users in February, and the productivity numbers barely moved. 900 million people using something that adds about 5% to the average person hours worked. The tools got very good very quickly. The way we fit them into a working day did not keep up, and that lag is the whole opportunity. So before you install anything else, run one test. Give the tool the task you did last Tuesday, the real one, and time both the doing and the checking. If the total is not clearly lower, the tool is entertainment, and there is nothing wrong with that as long as you know. Here's what I would actually do, and it takes about 2 weeks of mild inconvenience. First, track 1 week without changing a thing. Write down where the hours went in blocks of 30 minutes. It is tedious, and it is the only reliable way to find out whether your problem is writing, reading, meetings, or the switching between them. Second, take the single biggest slice that is cheap to check and put exactly one tool on it. 1. If your biggest slice is meetings, that is a note taker. If it is reading, that is a grounded notebook. Do not install 6 things in an afternoon and then judge all of them at once. Third, protect the hour you get back. Time that is saved but not claimed simply refills with more meetings, which is precisely how a company runs a successful pilot and reports no gain at the end of the quarter. Put the hour in the calendar as a real appointment. Fourth, kill anything that needs supervision. If you are checking the output line by line every single time, the tool has not removed the work. It has converted your job into proofreading, which most people enjoy considerably less than the job they had before. Here is what that looks like on a real week. 10 calls with 80 minutes of writing up, 3 hours of reading you keep postponing, 2 hours of formatting, chasing formulas, and rewriting the same 4 emails. After, the calls write themselves up and cost you 5 minutes of skimming. The reading becomes 40 minutes of questions and 15 of checking citations. The formatting drops to about half. Nothing else in the week changes at all. Add it up and you land somewhere near 3 hours from 3 tools, none of which required a new job title or a company-wide program. That is the realistic ceiling for one person, and it is worth having. My honest expectation for a normal working week, done properly, 2 to 4 hours, not 20. 2 to 4 every week, permanently, from about 3 tools you actually took the time to configure. That is roughly 150 hours a year, which is 4 working weeks handed back to you. It is a far less exciting claim than the ones in your feed, and it is the one that survives being measured with a stopwatch. If that was useful, the next video takes the research notebook apart properly, because it is the tool I get the most questions about. Subscribe and it will find you.